Do you find yourself being constrained by your own rules? Today's episode is all about releasing rigidity, and it's a topic that's very near and dear to us because a lot of it is just releasing the rules that we make up in our head as we go along through our day. How are you doing, Kat?
Doing pretty well. How are you?
I'm good. I like this topic. I am very open to being flexible, and I just don't know how to do it. And I think it's very honest, but I make these rules up in my head, and then I force myself to follow them, forgetting that I was the one that made them up, and I can change them. And I just really want to be more fluid with things, more flowing,
Sure.
more flexible. How about you?
Yeah, I think that when we're talking about being rigid, the idea of a rigid person to me is somebody that is like very controlling. Everything has to be their way. The person that assigns like which family member brings which dish to Thanksgiving dinner, just like sort of a hyper controlling, immovable type of person. I don't think you're like that at all.
Oh, no, I wasn't like that at all.
No, yeah, you're not like that at all. So that would be like an extreme example. But I do think that all of us, all people have these sort of unknown rules in their head, like, I don't do that. Or I think a lot of it can be rooted in things we learn to do and not to do as a child. For example, people who are people pleasers, like, oh, I have to, like, oh, I have a good example. I have to answer that text right now. Like that might be a rule in somebody's head that they have created. Like someone's going to be mad at me or someone's going to think I'm X, Y, or Z if I don't answer that right now. And so in this episode, by even bringing awareness to the fact that we all have these little rules in our head, it might help our listeners to notice when they have them, and it gives them the chance on their own to say, is this serving me or is it not? Am I putting myself and my needs first or am I not with this random rule I made up?
That's a really good point. And I am definitely like that with texting. And when you said that, I'm like, ow, that hurt. But that's what I mean. Like when I'm talking rigidity, I'm talking about my own mental rules, not conformity to the things I say. I think the way the world needs to be about like planning things or anything like that.
Yeah.
I try to be flexible with that stuff because I find that life has a habit of when I try to make it one way, it goes the other way. So I just kind of got to roll with it. Mm-hmm. But I agree. I think a few other ones that come up are when like maybe mealtime is a big one, not necessarily meal prep, but like we always eat at 5:00. Maybe you only have dessert on certain days of the week. There's a lot of structure that we have. And part of it is just for survival and it's totally okay. But it also creates these really, really strong pathways. So, like this week, you and I were hanging out and we ate like lunch at 3:00. And then it was like, we're not really hungry for supper.
Yeah.
But in my brain, I'm like, but I need to have a supper. And it didn't make sense. I wasn't hungry. There was absolutely no reason for me to put food in my mouth except for that rigid habit that I had of you have to have a meal in the evening, which doesn't make sense because really what I should be doing is paying attention to, are you hungry right now? Yes. Yeah. Okay. But now it's time to eat. And if it's a no, yeah.
We have definitely changed a ton of our like preconceived notions of food and health over the last year. And if you have listened to any of our previous episodes, you might know that one of our favorite things to say is that the rules are fake. And so we are constantly examining these sort of like life rules that we all have. Usually when we're talking about the rules are fake, we're referring to societal norms and saying that everyone has to have X, Y, and Z to be happy. But it also applies to that too. Like, oh, you have to eat at a certain time. Actually, I was noticing on Instagram, there's kind of been this new wave of moms just moving up dinner to like 4:00 because kids come home from school and they're like starving. And
Right.
then lots of these kids, they have activities and little sports they play and all these things. And so it's like you're either eating at 8:30 or you're eating at 4 o'clock. So instead of giving them snacks, these moms are having like full-fledged dinner at 4. And if they're hungry later, just give them a bar or whatever. And I was like, well, that's a perfect example of someone embracing flexibility and, not having to have the norm and not beating themselves up and not being like, I'm not a good mom unless we're all sitting down at 6:30 with our napkins and like having this big thing. It's like, you got to kind of do what works for you. And I loved that example. I was like, shoot, I should do that, because there's definitely 1 or 2 nights of the week where like it's really busy, and having a bigger meal ahead of time might work out better for us.
I like that idea. I think there's a lot of little rules that we talk about that we're not aware of until you shed awareness on it. And we always say to begin change, to do anything, you need to bring awareness to those things that you're doing subconsciously. For me, when I think about the rules and rigidity, I think what I need to do for myself is to challenge myself on why I think my way is better. And when I'm thinking that, like, why do I think that, I have to have that meal? Why do we have to have the meal at 5 o'clock? Why do I have to do the things in the structure that I've already created in my mind? And because part of it is, survival and just being easy. I'm not going to change the way I drive my car too much, because that's all subconscious and serving me for the most part. But there are a lot of times when you've got to look at these mental constructs that you've created and go, when did I make this up? What is this about? Because a lot of them we come up with are from very, very young ages. And I'm pretty sure the 5-year-old me that decided to put this shoe on like the left instead of the right may not have the same awarenesses that, present day Andrew did. He's got probably better hair though, to be fair. But, I do think like when you can bring that awareness to things and go, okay, I am clearly not living based on my best interest right now by keeping myself so fixed. I think it gives you room for expansion.
Yeah, I actually recently heard on a podcast, of course, I'm blanking on the name right now, but they were saying that the happiest people are the most flexible people. Now, you and I both know that there is certainly a place for discipline, and I don't want to tell the kids, just be flexible, do your homework, or maybe not do your homework, whatever. It's like, no, they have to do their homework, right?
Right.
Or like, during your football game, just like be flexible, just make up your own rules. It's like there's some things in life that like we need a little structure to. And so I think what they're referring to is just kind of being open to the possibility, being open to new people, new ideas. I mean, all of us can think of someone in our families that is super rigid in their belief systems and maybe like never open their mind to the possibility of something else. And it's like, sometimes those people can be hard to talk to. And I know that I would like to be somebody that, regardless of whichever friend my kids brought home or whoever they date in the future or whatever, I'd like to be open to all thoughts and possibilities and ideas, whatever kind of job they want to do. And so for some people, if they're raised in like in a rigid culture, it can be really hard to do that. But I think that expanding your mind, meeting lots of different kinds of people, examining your own preconceived beliefs and rules, even in your own household, like there's probably all these unspoken rules that you have. Like if you, like live with somebody, maybe you do certain chores and your partner does other chores, and it's like these unspoken rules, or maybe you do more of one thing, or you're always putting the kids to bed and like, you're kind of tired of this unspoken rule that got brought up and it's making you unhappy. Like having the flexibility to change things up can improve things too.
I agree. I think it's good to examine the things that we just do out of habit, for sure. Mm-hmm. I think another part of this, and I'm going to go a little bit deeper on it, when we think of these rules that we've made, these rigid notions that we carry along with us, they come out of a very real situation or event. So I think that's something that if you're looking at these things that you do and you go, I don't know why we do this. I don't know why we always have to have, a starch and a protein and vegetables at every meal. I don't know.
Example.
Yeah, there's a lot of, some of it's social, some of it's just made up, but that's it. It's all made up. Society's rule is just a rule we all agreed on at some point for the betterment of humanity. It may not serve anymore. A lot of them do, but that is part of it. So when we make up these rules, it's a survival mechanism. It is something that we're doing because we wanted to make sure that we were liked or that we simplified something, but it was coming from a place of necessity in the moment. And whether it's just, somebody complimented me when my hair was down. Now I always wear my hair down. So it's because that was the first time I got a compliment on my hair. And now that's just the way I do it, because you made up that rule. You made the rule that I look better this way without really ever questioning it. And a lot of us do that. I don't wear my glasses out in public a lot because I think I was called a nerd when I was younger. And I'm like, okay, well, I want to look cool, so I'm not going to wear my glasses out in public.
Oh my gosh, I love you in glasses. Make a new rule.
There we go. So thank you for that. Thank you for giving me a start to a new pattern
you're welcome.
in my brain. I think, I think part of it when we look at these things, it's not about vilifying ourselves or saying we did it wrong. It's about having compassion for the person that made the rule up in the first place. So the parent that is over planning the meals on Thanksgiving and all these things, they're just doing it out of what they were taught or what they experienced. It's not a criticism. It's just maybe saying you might be happier if you order pizza and everybody can actually sit around and talk rather than spend 2 days making a meal. That's definitely me projecting because that's me. But,
pizza for Thanksgiving. Make it a hashtag.
And that's how we single-handedly ruin Thanksgiving for millions of people. Anyway, just kidding. But I think that's a really good part, to just be able to look at ourselves and go, I'm doing this one thing that I don't like, but I did it because it really served a purpose. I'll give you something very, very obvious to me, and I'm sure you've noticed it over the years, Kat, is I don't laugh out loud. Like, I'll say LOL, but when I laugh, I will shrug my shoulder. I will bounce my shoulders, but I don't often laugh out loud. Now, the reason for this rule is because of growing up with an autistic sister. She was very sound sensitive. And I learned over time that, if I laughed out loud, there was pain that was involved with that. So I had to stop being loud. Yeah. And it's only in the last couple of years that I've looked at that and gone, no, I'm allowed to be like, that situation is long, long ago. But it was a rule as a teenager I made up to carry forward. Right. And I never really thought about it, and it's when you bring those awarenesses to yourself that you can go, oh, yeah, 12-year-old Andrew doesn't need to worry about that anymore. So, 40-something Andrew is going to change. And it's not going to happen overnight because, the change didn't happen overnight. It's progressive change that we allow ourselves to take part in.
I think that's a really good example. And I think there are a lot of people who behave a certain way or have certain things about themselves that they might not realize are rooted in some of their childhood experiences. Like, there might be somebody who wishes they would speak up more in a work meeting, but they can't bring themselves to do it. And if you sat down and analyzed it and thought back, why you are the way that you are, maybe you'll realize that every time you spoke up as a child, you were told to be quiet. Or every time you tried to share your opinion, you were told, no one wants to hear your opinion, or whatever it is. But most of us can maybe trace the things that we want to improve or the things we don't like about ourselves back to some very early experiences where these things get sort of locked in our brains. And so if there's something about yourself that you want to improve, like Andrew's saying, hey, I can laugh out loud, or, maybe somebody at work saying gosh, I really want to advance in my company, but I know I have to speak up to do it. Sometimes by bringing that self-awareness and understanding why you're doing what you're doing and recognizing you don't have to worry about that anymore, sometimes can break that cycle. And these are the rules, the quote unquote rules that we're talking about. I know it's a bit of an abstract topic, but it is interesting when you think about how many things like people have in their brains that they have to do a certain way or else, that can kind of be updated.
Yeah. And you see it a million times a day where you're not aware of it because it just happens. Mm-hmm. One of the rules is we were just talking about that. And I'm just smiling at this because, we're going into the Halloween season while we're recording this. And I haven't had a candied apple, like a caramel apple, since I was 8 years old because I had one and then I ended up being sick the next day and I missed Halloween. And that was the only Halloween I missed as a kid. And as you know, that's very traumatic. So I will still see these things. And I had a flu. It had nothing to do with the apple, that was we went
that
to
was
our
the
friend's
link
house.
in your brain. Yeah.
That's the link I made. And just as we were talking, I'm like, I want a candied apple. That sounds really good about now.
That does sound really good.
But there you go. Like when you start to kind of give yourself permission to look at yourself and go, isn't it silly how I always did this? Or, it might be even deeper. It might be like there may be valid, deep emotional roots in these things. And that's okay. It's just being able to look at yourself from an outsider's perspective and go, why do you do that?
Yeah.
It's an important, I think it's an important question to ask because look, if you're going to grow into the best version of yourself over the next 5 years, like we coach, it's going to take change. And change is the only constant, as we know, which is such a cliche. I really wish I hadn't just said that. But when you think about changing things, you're going to have to release the old ways to adopt and improve ways to grab onto those new things. And it can be hard. It's not always easy, but the more flexible you are with it, the easier it gets. And if you want a better example of releasing rigidity, travel is probably the catch-all for everyone. It's
so true.
Take your kids to Disney World and you're going to release all the rigidity things that you have. And if you do anything we've talked about this recently too, I think on another podcast, but like in traveling, sometimes you don't end up where you're planning to go. Sometimes you sleep on a bench because that's the only way it's working out for you that night. If you have the mental flexibility to be looking at things differently with curiosity and positive expectation and all these other good qualities that you want to have, life is easier. When you get to that point and you think, you know what? No, everybody else is wrong. And I hate the world and I hate the airline and I hate this and I hate. Well, you're getting more and more rigid because you are giving away your power to everyone else without kind of bringing it back and going, okay, so camping experiment in the Toronto airport tonight. Let's see how this pans out. Sometimes you got to do that.
You're so traumatized by that.
It really was a neat experience for the record.
Yeah.
Don't want to repeat it, but it was neat.
Yeah. I think what we're getting at here, if I may, and basically the point of the whole podcast, this is a personal growth podcast. 5 Year You is a personal development company. And our goal is to help show people how to become their best selves. Our belief is that when you are your authentic self, you are happiest. And so if you find yourself dissatisfied, if you find yourself like thinking like, your way is the right way all the time and things like that, and it's bringing you a lot of unhappiness, now is the time to sort of examine these beliefs that you have. Now is the time to maybe examine some of the things you want to improve about yourself. Like let's say I want to be more outgoing. I want to speak up at work was one of the examples. I want to laugh more. I want to, be better about keeping in touch with my friends or whatever it is. Now is the time to say, what areas would I like to grow in? And what can I do as a good first step to start that growth? and we bring up this topic, and we are not speaking at this from higher ground. We can both be very rigid about things. And this is coming from a place of us realizing, oh, like when we are more flexible, when we leave room for the surprises in life, really cool things happen.
Sure.
Yeah. And these are some of the things that we love to help people with.
Absolutely. So as we're talking about this, let's get a little more personal. What is one rigidity? I've been really having a hard time using this word in a sentence for some reason. But what's something that you look at for yourself and you're like, hey, you know what, I'm really rigid with this and I'd like to just give it a little more flexibility. Does anything come to mind that you're like, this is something I would like to let go of or adopt a new way?
I mean, I just don't think we have enough time to list all the things, like
just one.
I mean, I think that I can be very rigid with my work. I think that I kind of beat myself up for not going faster. So, as my main full-time gig, I'm a financial writer, and I can get very obsessive about how it is, how it looks. And I think I could save myself hours by just being a little bit more flexible. And I think my things can be like very high quality without being like the most extreme form of like crossed T's and dotted I's. I realize that's what makes me good, but I think it would bring a little bit more happiness to me to realize that's why we have editors on the other end of everything I write and things like that. But I hold myself to this high standard and I will like torture myself over it. I will stay up super late. I will like ruin the next day over things like that. I think I just need a better balance with it.
I like that. I like the idea of bringing more fluidity to your work for sure. And I've told you this before, but yeah, your meticulousness is one of the things that makes you an amazing writer. And part of it is just, you don't have to go completely the other way, but just releasing certain things. If you feel it's going to serve you, if you're like, you know what, I embrace this because this is who I am and how I am. And this is what makes me stand out. There is that aspect of it. So I was just kind of saying that for you to understand that just because it's rigid doesn't make it wrong.
I know that. And I think that there are other aspects of my life, like I need a little bit more balance. I'd like to I'm stopping myself from earning more too, because the things I do take up a lot of time. So I do think there's a way for me to be more streamlined or something like that. I don't know. Did you have a different example in mind when you were thinking? Do you have anything?
For you?
Yeah.
No, I was just asking you because I think it's very worthwhile for us to be put on the spot as we do with stuff like this, so that the first thing that comes out is usually that thing that you're going, yeah, that's the thing that I probably should work on.
I think it's definitely something I've been working on for a while, and I think it's just part of it is who I am, part of it is how I was raised. My mom tells one of her favorite Catherine stories is me getting in the car in elementary school and bursting into tears, and could barely like get me to say why I was crying. And it was because I got a 90 on a religion test, which like didn't even like count for anything. It was like, some, what they would call like a specials today, it was like,
right.
Anyways, and she was like, but that's a 90. And I'm like sobbing, and I think that's just kind of like me in a nutshell. And it's been very hard to grow out of that mindset and try to get a little bit more, just have a slightly more chill, as the kids say, as the cool kids say.
That's a good attitude to want to embrace. And again, that is a perfect example of being more flexible in your thinking. And we can totally get into, the perfection thing in a different episode too, because there is a lot there with, I think society has done something over the years.
So many things
about the perfectionist paradigm. And I just needed a good alliteration there. So I don't even know if that really fit. Sometimes the words just come out of my mouth and I go, Yeah. So I don't need to worry about being rigid with my talking. Maybe I should be a little more rigid. For me, honestly, the thing I need to get a lot better with is my patience. And I don't mean with other people. I mean with me.
Because you are exceedingly patient.
Yeah. With other people, I mean, if I could give myself the patience I give everyone else, I'd be fine. But with me, it's never enough. I'm never as far ahead as I want to be. And that's part of growth too, right? You have the vision of where you want to be 5 years from now. And you're like, I want to be there now. And, you forget about all the steps you got to do to get there. But one of the expressions that was given to me very recently is that patience is the fastest way to get what you want. And I'm trying to embrace that. I'm trying to just conceptualize that in my head because it's so...
I'm just trying to hold that sentence.
I'm just trying to hold it and let it be. But I really am looking at it and going like, it's hard. It's hard to not try to make things happen and to sit back and go, it's enough. You kind of, the note went in the bottle and went out to sea. I just have to wait for it to come back, whatever that issue might be, rather than, swim alongside the bottle the whole way to make sure it gets where it's supposed to go and people read it the way it's supposed to be read, and then that they put it back in. Like it's just kind of being able to go, no, okay, it's good enough. And now I'm just going to wait and see what happens. So it's definitely something I think we all struggle with. We all have mental constructs that may not serve us, but we're so used to them that they, it's not really like a nice warm blanket. It's like a weighted blanket that might be just a tiny too heavy.
Too much. Yeah.
Yeah. So it's a journey, but I'm happy to share it with our listeners.
I like that. And I think being flexible, another way to say it is to give yourself grace, to give others grace, to continue to be open-minded with yourself, with other people, with the people you love. And I think the more flexible you are, the more grace you can give to yourself and others, the happier you'll be, the more expectations you can release. And that is something all of us can benefit from.
Amen. Amen. Well, I think that's a good point to lead into the glimmers. And if you're new to the show, glimmers are that little thing that are delighting us in this present moment. So, Catherine, what is your glimmer this week?
Well, actually, you and I started listening to a book together last week, and it is The In-Between. And I waited for this book for like months and months and months from the library, and I'm really glad that I did. It's a New York Times bestseller, and it is written by a hospice nurse, and she describes many different patient experiences that she had as they transition. And it's a really beautiful book. We're only a couple chapters in so far, but it's gotten just rave reviews, and I'm really enjoying it.
It's so How about good. You? You've introduced me to thrifting, which I was very, very adept at in my younger years. And I always, it's such a silly thing in one way, but I always wanted a ball chair, like a yoga giant ball that sits on a chair for your core and stuff. And I could never justify spending the $200 that it is on Amazon, because I'm like, I don't know if I'm going to use it. Well, I took myself out thrifting yesterday, and I found one for $30, and I am quite happy with my find. So thank you for reintroducing me to this beautiful world of thrifting.
You are so welcome. Highly recommend to others. Good for your wallet, good for the planet. Nothing beats a good find.
Absolutely. All right. Well, thank you very much, everyone, and we will see you next time. Take care.
Bye.
Just a reminder, we're two people on the internet. We're not doctors or anything else, but we do want to help. If you feel that you need professional medical care, please see a licensed medical practitioner.
Oh, and don't forget, if you want to get that advice from your future self, head on over to 5yearyou.com/future to get signed up.
We're rooting for you.